What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I know it's been a while, but this seems to be the template I'm going to use, I think, from now on, about every 2 weeks. Unless, for whatever reason, I get called to talk about something weekly, we'll do that. But I think this every other week thing is going to work out just fine. We're going to take a break from the theme as of late, the death and dying and that kind of thing. And we're going to get to something that I've been asked to talk about a long time ago, when I asked the listeners if they had a topic. And the reason why we're going to do it now is because I've been talking about it for a long time, and B, like, this is what spring is about, right? Is about starting new. So in order to start new, we have to kind of put the old away. So I've really been in this mindset lately of getting these things that are hanging out there, crossed off the list, tidied up. We can't move on unless we get some of this old stuff out of the way. And some of that was this episode I'm going to do right now, which is about imposter syndrome. I've talked about it for a long time. It's just time to do it. Let's just talk about it, get it out there, and then we can move on to some other things. The other thing was, that chicken leg challenge thing is still hanging out there. And it's really starting to bother me that we've been talking about this for almost a year now, and we have yet to do it. So I've reached out to Chicken Legs to have him get me some dates, and we're just going to go get after it. No, we'll see if this works. Just pick a date, pick a time, pick a place. Let's meet up, say hello, and then let's just get to work. And then the benefit of that is twofold. One is we finally prove, old versus young. And then he's also a new dad. So we're going to do a show after that about, being a firefighter, working 24-hour shifts, being a new dad, being a fairly new husband, and trying to figure out what that life looks like. And I think it'd be super beneficial. It'll be a good time too for Juan. And I'm in the mood. I'm interested in taking him on and whipping his ass, and then trying to find out a little bit more about him and what makes him tick. So some things that have been just perpetually out there, let's just get them tidied up, crossed off, and then we can move on to some other stuff. As for you too, if there's something out there that's just been hanging out there that you've been meaning to do for a long time and you're just not doing it, just go do it. Just clean the shed, right? Clean out your garage. Just get it done. I've been wanting to do this for 2 or 3 months. Well, just go do it. What we talked about it last week. What's holding you back? Just get it done. You'll feel so much better. The sense of completion. You'll be able to move on to other things. It's really hard for me to move on to things, new things, when I know that there's old things hanging out there. And let's be real. In the last 2 weeks, I've had the time. I've just chosen not to spend that time doing the things that I know I should be doing. And it's been a fairly low place for me in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but regardless of that, the work is still out there and the things still need to be done. So let's just do it. Let's just get it knocked off the list. As far as future shows, I've got 3 or 4 good ones coming. Pastor Jeremy is going to come back, and we're going to talk about eulogies and why we eulogize people and the tradition of that, and how to write a good one. And in the event that us in our profession have the opportunity to eulogize somebody, I know that there's a lot of ceremonial things that happen with us and in our business when we pass away, and it's all wonderfully great and inspirational and moving and emotional. But in the off chance that we get to stand up and speak about somebody, maybe we'll learn a little bit about how to do that and how to do it well. Michael Schultz is going to come back, and we're going to talk about his new project, which is kind of like a private training, EMS first responder training program that he's going to offer, that he's been working on. I'm a big fan of putting ideas to fruition. I think it's great when somebody comes up with, we all know how ideas start. You're sitting around and all of a sudden it comes to to your head and you get this big euphoric feeling of, oh my God, this is going to be great. And then 2 or 3 days later, that feeling passes and you just kind of never do anything with the idea. I've done that a ton with ideas in the past and big things. I was going to do big things. Well, he did it. He put pen to paper and figured out a way and then developed content and put himself out there. So I want to talk about that. And I think that's great. And then chicken legs. And then of course I'll do a show coming up about the whole process of walking with your friend during terminal illness and try to figure out what that looks like. And that probably won't be in one episode. That'll probably be in multiple as we kind of move through the what I would call the post MFC era, and how we're all kind of trying to navigate that in a different way. So good stuff. I would like to announce that I'm going to attempt to make my own sourdough bread. And before you all jump on my stuff about identifying as a middle-aged white woman, I'm going to tell you why. For one, it's delicious. And for two, I have the time. But the real reason is my 14-year-old is a savage when it comes to nutrition, recovery, and training. Like she gets it to a level that I have yet to get anybody in my family really to get it at. And she's a savage. Now, that being said, every morning she enjoys a piece of toast with her eggs. And there's nothing wrong with that. Piece of toast with some PB2 or some peanut butter and a little bit of sugar-free jelly on it, I think is delicious. Now, that being said, the bread that we use, the bread that we buy, I was looking through the ingredient list, and I'll share a little bit of that with you while we're here. There's just in the core ingredients, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients, just in the core ingredients. There's 2 preservatives in the bread, words I can't even pronounce. And then under the other ingredient category, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 other ingredients. So we're talking 8, 10, 15 ingredients in one piece of bread that we use, bought at the store, that we typically, when we go to, think that it's a good quality bread. I don't know any difference. It's just the bread we've always bought. And I'm not going to brand shame it because that's not what I'm into, but I'm just saying. Well, with sourdough bread, there's 3 ingredients: flour, salt, and water, period. So 3 ingredients, takes a little elbow grease. It's going to take a little know-how. I currently know nothing about this process. And from what I can gather, you need to be fairly intellectual to pull it off and to pull it off well. But if I can trade her one piece of toast, and she's on board with this is not something that I'm for. Sorry about that. When I record this on my phone, I was getting a phone call, and apparently what it does is it shuts off my recording. So I had to figure out why everything was starting over, and then I figured it out. So I'll splice that in and cut that in. But anyway, we're talking about sourdough bread. Long story short, these are one of the things that like separates you from your competition. Everybody can do like the gross things well, like make sure you're getting sleep, make sure you're, eating good whole foods, make sure you're, not eating too many treats, make sure, you're drinking your water, and everybody can change that. But it's the little things you do in a day, the little changes you make that I think separates you from your competition. So if I can take that piece of bread from the grocery store with 15 ingredients and change that into a piece of bread that I made in my kitchen with 3 ingredients, to me, that's a net benefit, right? And to her, I feel like that would be a net benefit too. Now, it may not be a measurable net benefit as far as, she goes from a 14-second 100 to a 9.9, and all of a sudden we're, you know what I mean? I don't believe that at all. I believe that it's going to be a net benefit in the way that over the long term, we get rid of some of those things, some of those extra ingredients, and we move into the more natural stuff. And I think that then her recovery goes farther, then her sleep goes farther, then her hydration goes farther. You see what I'm saying? So before you start making fun of me for getting into the, in the sourdough chat rooms and Facebook groups, that's my intention. And I think it's delicious too. And I love a sourdough breakfast sandwich. So I'm all in on this deal. We're going to see how it goes. But anyway, today's episode, let's get into that. It's about imposter syndrome. And I've been holding off on this one because I just don't really know how to articulate this in a good way. I know what the literature says, and I know from personal experience, having experienced a little bit of it. I don't know of any like real good fixes other than what some resources have shown. But I'm interested in talking about it. I don't know that it's specific to first responders. I'm sure that other professions experience it. But anyway, let's talk about what it is first. It's a persistent pattern of thinking, right, that can significantly impact how you perform. So to me, this means that it's a psychological issue. So what is it? It's that nagging voice that whispers you're not good enough, even when you've achieved success. So it's where individuals doubt their skills and accomplishments, despite evidence to the contrary, meaning they have proven time and time again that they are competent in what they do, in whatever particular discipline they're in. But there's a constant feeling of I'm a fraud. Somebody's going to find out that I'm faking it. I'm not as good as who I think I am. I think it's a psychological construct that we try to understand, and I don't know that there's a way to understand it. Like there's no objective. You can't look at somebody and say they've got imposter syndrome. You can listen to some of the things they say and maybe figure out that they have it or deduce that they may be experiencing some of it, but you can't go around and say that guy's got it, that girl's got it, or that person doesn't have it. So why do we think we get into it more in public safety and in first responders than others? Well, we're in a high pressure environment. There is no other way to put it. Like constantly being asked to perform in front of people. And that's a big deal when you go into somebody's house because they've asked for help or they've called somebody for help, and you're the person or the people or the team that shows up, and now all eyes are on you. So it's easy to get caught up in that performance aspect of it and be like, oh man, I just was not on my game on that one, or I felt like I was a little off, or I stumbled over this, or I have a thing where I think that everybody thinks I'm full of shit. Like I'm naturally suspicious all the time that if somebody asks me my opinion and I give them what I think is a really good, thoughtful answer, that they're just thinking in their head, man, this guy's full of shit. I think that all the time. Now, am I sometimes? Yes. But I always have this nagging voice in the back of my head that says there's no way they bought what you said. Even though what I'm saying is very truthful and honest and comes from a good place and comes from experience. That is the type of imposter syndrome. And so I always get a little weird when people ask me good smart questions and I give them a good smart answer. It's almost like I'm trying to convince them. I almost feel like I'm trying to convince them that I know what I'm talking about. When all you got to do really is, if with enough education experience, like like the truth comes out. Like people who are honest and genuine and thoughtful in their responses, and those that are selling some bullshit. The old used car salesman spiel. Like everybody can pick that out these days. We work in a place where, and I don't mean a specific facility, I mean like in a place, like our job in a place where we're with a bunch of high performers, type A personalities, and there's a feeling of perfectionism, I think, that's out there that may be an unfair cloud over people's heads where I have to get this right. Otherwise, I'm going to get peer reviewed and I'm going to get criticized. And there's going to be some competition there where I have to prove that I'm competent to this person so that they don't have to impose their expertise or seniority over me by telling me I did something wrong. I think that's a big deal. Like, I always thought that it was, you kind of akin it to, we're treating the audit process and not really treating the patient. So and I can't think of a specific example right now off the top of my head, but I know I've been in this in my career where I've heard providers say, well, let's just do it. That way I don't get dinged in the audit or whatever, instead of just doing what you feel is right because you're the expert in your field in patient transport, on whether you do believe or do not believe that you need to do something. So there's always that, how will my peers judge me based on this? And that can really lead down a dark road where now you start to question every bit of your decision making. And over time, if that becomes a habit, then you have no choice but to believe that you're not competent in your job, right? And even though you've proven yourself time and time and time again, if you keep telling yourself or doing things that don't align with that validation, then you're just going to continue to believe that you're not living up to whatever certain standard you've set or your service is set. Does that make sense? Maybe you're in a slump, man. Like maybe you're just like you in the last 5 shifts you've had 4 unfavorable outcomes, and for no other reason other than it was just their time. That can weigh on people a lot, where you start to question, should I be here at this job? Should I be doing this? Am I capable? Am I competent? Am I the right person for this? You get too many of those in a row. Obviously that can really weigh on you mentally. And I know the feeling. Anytime you have a poor patient outcome, it's not pleasant. If you go through your mind and try to figure out, what was it, if there was anything at all that you could have done different. None of us come away with a poor patient outcome without some sense of reflection on, is there a situation or was there a situation that could have changed the outcome? And that's perfectly natural and normal, I think. I have a tendency to continually question whether or not I would survive in another flight program. And let me expand on that a little bit. I have taken every test, I have every certification, I have every credential that anybody else in the country would have to do my position here in Central Iowa. However, there are flight programs out there that do more and do better and do more often, perform skills and things that I don't particularly get exposure to. So even though we have to come up with the same answers to the same test question, there are other programs out there that are exposed to those test questions on a daily basis in their job that I may not be. And I'll use the example of, let's say, invasive line monitoring, Swan-Ganz catheters, capillary wedge pressures, monitoring things like that, making sure that it doesn't migrate. Like I had to memorize how to do that on a test. But I can't tell you the last time I've seen one in real life. So the point of that is that when you go to your day, do I believe that there's a difference between street smarts and book smarts? Absolutely. I do. I believe that over 15 years of just even being in the air medical transport world, that I've forgotten a lot of textbook answers to things. But I know that I've applied all of those things to patient care. Does that make sense? I may not be able to articulate their carboxyhemoglobin dissociation curve well, or even at all. And I know I've answered test questions to prove that I do know it, but I can't just off cuff dictate to you a really good comprehension of that to the point where I think I could teach that to you. But I can recognize those things on a patient transport. Now, that in itself has a tendency to make you feel kind of like a dipstick sometimes, right? Like if somebody presents you with a test question that says, what's the partial pressure of oxygen at sea level? And you're like, I don't know, man. Like the last time I got asked this question was 20 years ago. That can kind of make you feel like a dipstick, right? And then you start to wonder, well, geez, what else have I forgotten? Like, what else about my job and my profession do I not remember anymore? And is that impacting my performance? My opinion is this: more often than not, the answer is no. There's a lot of trivia out there, like I call barroom trivia in our job. That's cute to know, but not really applicable. Meaning, I'll give you this example. Recognizing hypothermia on a 12 lead. That's cute, right? But I can't think of any time where I've needed a 12 lead to validate whether or not I have somebody experiencing hypothermia or not. So if I go back and I share this 12 lead with somebody and they're like, do you see that? And I'd be like, what? Well, it's hypothermic. That has an ability to kind of make you question yourself and make you feel like that you're not competent in that situation. When in fact, there's way more signs to pick up on to suspect hypothermia than there ever will be for a 12 lead EKG. Does that make sense? So the more we do that to ourselves and the more we do that to each other, I think that really kind of gets us into that mindset of, man, and that's not to be confused with continuing to learn and grow and continue to expand your knowledge and listen, because I do it every day. I listen to all kinds of medical podcasts, and I listen to all kinds of stuff, and I read all kinds of books, and I read all kinds of stuff, because it's impossible to know it all, right? But I think if we dwell in the trivia knowledge, the sports bar trivia knowledge, and not in the nuts and bolts of what we do on a daily basis, I think that's where we kind of start to confuse ourselves with, well, am I as good as I think I am? Do I perform as well as I think I do? Am I that provider that I used to be when I first came out of school? Because the answer is no, and none of us should be. There's a big disconnect, I think, between classroom and the field. Now, we get a bridge to that a little bit in our ride time. We all have to sign up and ride with an ambulance service and do X amount of things and see X amount of stuff and get X amount of calls before we're signed off on and we're able to do that. But that's just a very small snapshot of a large cohort of people and a large cohort of situations that you may see. If you need 15 ambulance calls and 5 of those were the same patient refusal, you're certainly not going to be exposed to the litany of things that you could be exposed to. And once you get out into the field and now you see this one-off or this 1% situation and you feel like you don't know how to navigate that is certainly a good way to start the imposter syndrome thought process of saying, man, do I really know what I'm doing? Well, I can assure you the answer is yes. You do know what you're doing. You just maybe haven't exposed yourself to that situation yet. And then, so what does experience breed? Confidence. You only get as good as your experience dictates, meaning the sicker, more highly acute patients and people that you take care of, the better your skills get and the better your confidence gets, right? But the problem is, the only way to get that is you have to be in a position to get those high acuity patients, and you have to learn and develop that confidence in those skills. And it takes a long time. Like, this is not an overnight process. We used to say all the time, you can get 1 year experience in 10 years, or you can get 10 years experience in 1 year. But that still doesn't change that you may experience doubts and questions about your skill level and your competence down the road. Like, I think it's one of those things that can hit us at any time. The other thing, you got to worry about too is, man, there's cameras everywhere now. There's social media everywhere now. And it's really hard to kind of focus on performing if we're all going to get to that, or all have been on that scene, man, where somebody's holding up a camera and you're like, all I want to do is just, I want to communicate with my patient. I want to do what's in the best interest of my patient with not a lot of extra, right? And that extra stuff that we have nowadays is enough to make you stutter or stammer, trip, do whatever. And then after the call, you're like, man, I really botched that thing. When in fact, you probably didn't. It just, that extra pressure makes us try to fool us into thinking that at that particular moment in time, we were incompetent. And don't get me wrong, there have been examples of that, but I think, the social media just amplifies that small percentage of incidences that do happen. I think sometimes the other thing that can contribute to us doubting ourselves and trying to figure out, who we are and what we do is that I think there's a training flaw in things, right? Where we're training people, try to put all these like medical mysteries as a scenario. And they're like, you have XYZ and, you have a 10-minute transport time. What would you do? Well, you would manage your ABCs, transport to the hospital, and then at the end of the training, they come back, oh, sorry, this person had, some sort of rare, less than 1% cardiomyopathy that you didn't pick up on in that 10 minutes that you had this scenario. So now your patient's dead. And you're like, what sense does that even make? Well, so now you take that, and then, people spend all kinds of times in books and things learning about these 1%. Like, there's things I learned in school that I have yet to see, that I have yet to even experience. And I was in school 22 years ago. Right. But we took the time to talk about these less than 1% things. There's skills that I learned 22 years ago that I have yet to do, but we take the time to, and probably too much time over these less than 1% things. And so that's going to do nothing but, now, what it could do is say, oh yeah, listen, I really need to brush up on that. I haven't seen that in a long time. What it could also do is be like, oh, I should have known better. I am really not good at this. Or I've been around a long time. I should have picked up on that because I saw that right pinky, kind of flinch a little bit. I should have known that that was a symptom of some rare European fungal bacterial infection in their skin, which is why they have growth on their mitral valve in their heart, which is why they have mitral valve regurgitation, which I heard when I listened to Heart Towns. No, that's not true at all. We have a tendency in EMS to come up with these elaborate what ifs. And if we get to the point where the what if is we can't answer the next question in the what if scenario, we start to feel kind of dumb, right? If we just ratchet that training back to do what you do best, airway, breathing, circulation, heart attack, strokes, traumatic injury, respiratory, pediatric respiratory, right? We get real confident. We get real competent. Those are the 95% of the calls that we get. those 1% things will ultimately take care of themselves. Because even if you treat those 1% calls the same way you treat those 95% calls, you're still going to be ahead of the game. So I think sometimes when training officers or training people try to stump us and try to get the best of us with some sort, I'm not saying I'm not up for a challenge, but if we do too much of that, we get caught into this thing where I'm like, man, I feel like I'm behind the curve, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. And I think that some of that could be seen as just unfair. Does that make sense? The other thing we get into too is peer pressure and comparison. The competitive nature of some of us in services and in neighboring services or neighboring departments. Comparison is the thief of joy. I wish I was more like BVL. I'm going to sit here and just pound my self-esteem because I'm not as smart as that guy. I'll never live up to that guy. I'll never be this guy. He's so much smarter than me. He's so much better than me. If I could only write, like, how often do we do that? A lot, man. I think we do. And the reality is we're just not. You just got to be you. I think one of the other problems we can get into, I think when you're mentoring somebody, or when you're, and this came from a listener, I think when you're mentoring somebody, or you're a clinical educator, or you're a training officer, or you're a field training medic, or whatever, have you ever come across those people that you feel like have intentionally trying to make you feel dumb? Right? Like they're trying, for whatever reason, their ego needs a boost, and they get real satisfaction with imposing their experience on you and saying, I've been doing this for so long and I'm this or that, and you're just a pup, and you'll never get it, and you'll never make it in this if you don't do this, and you'll never do this if you don't do this, and everything you do is dumb and wrong. And yeah, can you imagine doing a 12-hour shift, working with some person that all they did was beat you down all day? I'm not saying not hold you accountable. I'm just saying beat you down, like where everything is not good enough, where there's no positive to anything. Like psychologically, what could that do to you when you're trying to succeed in a very high pressure environment? So if you're listening and you're a mentor and you're a field training medic and you're a clinical educator, like, I hold people accountable, and if they do it wrong, say they did it wrong, and here's how to do it right. But there's a big difference between degrading somebody for your own personal gain or your own personal feelings, and holding somebody accountable to what's right. The last one being probably unrealistic expectations. Listen, we're not going to save them all. It'd be cool. I've yet to save them all. That's not to say there's a certain sort of, what do I want to say? There's a certain sort of, just relax because we're not going to save them all. I don't believe that that's true, but just know, like, you're not going to bat 1,000. Nobody ever did. I think sometimes our patients can make us feel like a fraud too. Like if you've ever brought somebody to the ER and they tell a completely different story than what they told you, or they've withheld information, or they've added something to the story. Like, I don't know how many times I've told a nurse, yeah, listen, this is, so-and-so, and their foot hurts, and here we are. And the person goes, oh, and then the nurse goes, hey man, you having chest pain? He's like, yeah, 10 out of 10. And you're like, that is what and then you go back to the truck and you're like, man, what did I miss? Or what did I not ask? Or, man, that guy or gal made me look like a total fraud. That does happen, and you can't take it personal. Like, just tell the people what you know and what they told you, and go on. So what kind of impact can this have on us? Well, I mean, you get that self-doubt creeps up on you, and not only work, you can take that home. right? You're going to take that home, and you're going to be distracted at home, and you're going to feel inadequate at home, and you're going to want to do things at home, and you're going to start using your free time now as your work, and your work, your job and your free time are going to start to overlap a little more to favor more work. Maybe you're because you want to get more reps in, or you want to attend more conferences, or you want to do more things, all of which are reasonably good things as long as it's not interfering on your day-to-day life. Then you're going to start second guessing yourself. Should I intubate? Oh man, I don't know. Should I intubate? I don't know, but time's ticking. You make a decision. You're going to double clutch it, man. And you're going to question on whether or not you're making the right decision. Maybe you're not going to go for that promotion because you don't think you're good enough. Well, here's something I believe. If you've got the title, you've gone through the training, you've gone through the certifications, you've gone through the validation, you're competent. You wouldn't be there otherwise, right? The system is in place, while not perfect, to vet the people that are probably not cut out for public safety in some sort of way. I'm not saying the standards have gotten lower. I'm just saying there's a process in place to make sure that when you come out of the other side, certified, trained, licensed, that you are already at a certain level of proficiency and competence. Now, there's a lot of building on that we got to do. Firmly believe that through everybody's career. But you put in the work. So let's start there with a good foundation and a base that you are at that moment competent. Okay. Challenge your negative thoughts, man. Like if you got some negativity steeping in your head, like question it, figure it out. Where's it coming from? What can I do about it? Can I look up an answer? Can I seek out peer support? Can I find a mentor? Can I ask some questions? Like, did I do it? What would you do? That kind of thing. Challenge those negative thoughts, though. You got to get them out there. Identify that it's happening and ask why it's happening, and then try to figure out how to stop it. And then there's always the good old fashioned, stress management techniques. Make sure you have hobbies, find healthy ways to manage your stress, find a good mentor, find somebody to confide in. And I think we can, depending on when you're at in your career, like this imposter syndrome can sneak up in different ways, right? When you're new, coming from the classroom to the field is already completely sometimes overwhelming and intimidating, right? But that's where the preceptors and the mentors come in. Make sure you tell somebody who's new that you have also been in this position, and that you've also made mistakes, and that you've also not been flawless, and that there is life after a mistake. Even seasoned veterans can experience imposter syndrome, especially when something's new to them. They're learning a new procedure or skill, they're implementing something, they'd be like, man, they're reviewing something from a long time ago. It'd be real easy to get caught up in that. Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. And then obviously if you're in some sort of leadership role, make sure you're connecting with your teams, making sure they're not in a position where their negative thoughts are dominating their performance. I think we all get it. I think doctors get it. I think nurses get it. I've never really done some sort of survey or anything like that, but I think I'm sure teachers get it. Anytime you are asked to impart your expertise on something, I think that there's probably a point where you're like, man, does this person really buy that I am what I'm selling, which is the professionalism that I'm trying to portray. And I think at some point we all kind of wonder if we're as good as we think we are. Then there's certainly a difference between being humble and being a narcissist. I don't think this is the conversation for it right today. But we all know that we've all seen those people that are, almost, borderline self-deprecating, and we've seen all those people that are, um, borderline narcissistic. I think that the good clinicians find themselves in the middle, which I consider humble. Um, Knowing that they may have weaknesses, able to put work in to kind of shore up those weaknesses, and are willing to expose themselves as not being perfect, and but willing to acknowledge it and seek input on how to improve. It's a tough job. Like, there's no way around it. Like, if you're in public safety, like, it's tough work. It's hard. It's hard to perform on a level where somebody's outcome is affected by your performance. It's a tough world to take that home. It's a tough place to live that on your day off. Um, it I don't know how else to. There's enough going against us, I think, and sometimes in this profession, with obviously sleep deprivation and the high stakes game we live in, without adding to, psychological negativity, which is what imposter syndrome is. I'm not saying it's not a normal thing to go through. I think it is. But I think before it gets to the point where it becomes a disability to your care, we probably need to recognize it and try to figure it out. So we're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. Everybody's doing a good job. We're doing the best we can. That's all I got for today. Any comments on this one, let me know in the comment section. If you've got an experience with imposter syndrome, how you've nixed it. Does it still creep up? It still creeps up with me. So just know you're not alone. All right, that's all I got for today. Work hard. Be kind. Hey guys, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Shift Change Podcast. I need to ask if you would leave a rating. I think that it helps people who are new to the podcast find it quicker. It doesn't do me any good, but it does help other people that are looking for the Shift Change Podcast on Spotify or Apple. It just comes up quicker the more ratings that you give it. I don't, whether you give it a 2 or a 5, it doesn't make a difference. It just helps other people. If you need to get a hold of me, contact me via my email, the show email, which is talkshiftchange@gmail.com. Or you can message me on Instagram at talk.shiftchange. Excuse me, at talk.shiftchange on Instagram. As always, thanks for listening. I could not have imagined how well this podcast has been received. So, as always, I appreciate it. Work hard, be kind.